broadcasting from the studios of AM 950 KTNF, the progressive voice of Minnesota, and airing on WCPTA 20, Chicago's Progressive Talk. Welcome to The Gaily Show, the only daily LGBTQ radio news and talk show in the United States. I'm your host, John Parker. It is Friday, and we end our weeks talking about culture and entertainment because LGBTQ artists, writers, filmmakers, and theater makers are one of the most censored groups in America today. So every week we want to be lifting up their work for you to read and to watch and to attend. What is on the show today? In the second half hour, Mary E. Roach will be here to talk about her new romance novel, adult romance novel, her first, We Are the Match. Up first, Lana Lin is a writer, artist, and filmmaker based in New York and Connecticut. She is the author of the books Freud's Jaw and Other Lost Objects, Fractured Subjectivity in the Face of Cancer. Her film and video works include the Cancer Journals Revisited, her various works and collaborative projects with Thao Lam as Lin plus Lamb have been exhibited at festivals and art and educational spaces throughout the world, including the Museum of Modern Art, the Whitney, the New Museum, the National Gallery of Art in Washington, D.C. That's just a partial list, folks. Her new book, The Autobiography of H. Thao Lam, is out now. Hello, Lana. Welcome to The Gaily Show.
Hi, thank you so much for inviting me to the show.
Absolutely. All right. Well, let's start with what folks can expect when they turn to page one.
Well, at heart, the autobiography of H. Thao Lam is a queer love story, and I situate it between memoir, social criticism, and conceptual art. And one of its defining features is I use the literary form that Gertrude Stein invented in the autobiography of Alice B. Toklas, in which she uses her life partner, Alice, as a kind of mouthpiece to tell her own story. But I kind of narrate the chronicle of my own and my partner's lives through my partner Lantao's voice.
It is quite the Gertrude Stein's book is, kind of like a woo, how are we doing this here? And it's really lovely to see and we're going to get into that, your book being in conversation with that one. I just want to say, because I loved it so much in the first chapter, The Memory of the Mango was delightful, both in the writing, but also the humor and suffusion of love in it. So that was just something that I was like, oh, I love that part.
Thank you.
And it's in the beginning, so folks, you have that to look forward to when you get started on page one. Given how policed queer books are and whether or not you can find them in bookstores or not, I'm always curious about how these books find their way to our guests. And so I'm really curious to find out how the autobiography of Alice B. Toklas by Gertrude Stein found its way to you.
Somebody else asked me that, and I was never assigned it in school, but of course somehow it just seeped in through the culture that I knew who Gertrude Stein was. And I distinctly remember that the statue was installed at Bryant Park of Gertrude Stein, and I made a pilgrimage there. And I think I've always been attracted more to the mythology of Stein and Toklas's lesbian relationship and its many years of devotion. And then I was just very fascinated by this book, with this very unique device of kind of channeling oneself through another person.
Mm-hmm. In the first chapter, you talk about how you and Lantao are there aren't very many similarities, right, between you and Alice and Gertrude. So why use that particular book? I mean, was it just the framing of it? Because you are in conversation with it throughout your own book. So talk to me about that conversation.
Yeah, I mean, it is an homage to the book, although I'm not like a huge scholar or necessarily fan of Stein's oeuvre, but this precise book, how it kind of documents their relationship. As I said, I was kind of more interested in their relationship than necessarily her literary production. But this way in which you can voice it through another person was really what got to me. And then I really wanted to push back against it as well as honoring it, and to sort of underscore what's missing in their narrative. They become emblematic of modernism in the arts, with the literary salon, and the Asian presence is really pushed to the understory in Stein's work. And Monique Trung, the novelist, had already written a Book of Salt in which she kind of fictionalizes Stein and Toklas's Asian servant into the cook that she calls Bin. So yeah, I'm kind of pushing back against their celebrated mode of salon living, while at the same time I honor it.
Right. Maybe we should, for folks who don't know who Gertrude Stein and the literary salon, can you give a little bit about who Gertrude was?
I'm not going to do as good a job as the historians, of course, but she was celebrated for having these Saturday evening dinners with the likes of Picasso and Alfred Whitehead, and the salon was filled with modernist art, and Stein actually sat for Picasso, and the portrait of Stein became very famous and was hung in the room where they had dinner, and people would talk and argue about the paintings. And the book Autobiography of Alice B. Toklas is very much a kind of compendium of gossip, of art gossip amongst the great Cubist and Surrealist painters and writers, Hemingway included amongst them, and Fitzgerald. Yeah.
I'm talking with Lana Lin, author of the autobiography of H. Lan Thao Lam, which was longlisted for the 2025 National Book Award in Nonfiction. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Lana will have a reading for our listeners in Chicago. There will be a reading at the Women and Children First bookstore in Chicago on Thursday, November 6th. We will include a link to Lana's website where you can find all the information. Of course, you can also just Google Women and Children First Book First website. Goodness, it is the end of the week and I just can't talk today. All right, this is maybe a too obvious question, but you and Lan Thao are a creative team. Was it the same in the writing of this book?
No, I claim sole authorship, but with the blanket permission from Lan Thao to make a work of art out of our lives. And they understood that artistic license is needed, and that I wasn't really after the idea of authenticity or verisimilitude, and they understand the artistic process. So they basically said, "You go at it," and gave me full license.
So when was the first time they read it?
They actually read it quite a long way into the process. I had done a full draft and even worked one pass with the editor. But before it was going to go out into the world, they were going to have their eyes on it.
I'm curious what the viewpoint unlocked for you, right? So I've interviewed Carmen Marie Machado about her book In the Dream House, and she said this book didn't work until I wrote it in the second person. And I've talked to Nancy Gabion, who her book The Fear of Large and Small Nations, where she said I was trying to write it as a memoir, but it just it didn't work until I had that third person narrative going on there. For you, what unlocked using the autobiography of Alice B. Toklas?
It is actually that unlocking was being able to write about myself in the third person, and uniquely through the point of view of my partner. It gives it both a kind of distance, but also an extreme intimacy. And I think that one can get closer to difficult subjects when you tend to take a step back and write it in the third person. So I could be a little more sympathetic about my child self.
This is essentially a double autobiography. In the book, you cover a lot of topics: photography, cancer, tropical fruit, Eve Sedgwick's eyeglasses. And then there's already a challenge, I think, when I talk to, nonfiction writers and memoirs specifically about which topics they're going to choose, which events they're going to choose within their books, within just a single memoir. But here you have a double autobiography. So I'm curious about your process of analyzing topics and events from both of your pasts and current presents to include in the book. I mean, what was that like?
I mean, here's where I did use the Stein as a kind of a structure that helped because I used Stein's chapter titles, chapter headings as kind of containers. And she has before I came to Paris, and I would have before I came to New York. So with what she had in Paris, I had in New York, and then she has a certain time period of the war, and she's referring to World War I, and I have the war, meaning the Vietnam-US war. So that helped to sort of put things in buckets. And then I wanted to also kind of follow suit in a certain way with Stein, where Stein is really addressing some really big world events, but also very daily, quotidian gossip, as I said. And I don't do so much gossip in my book, but I was interested in putting really large world events next to seemingly inconsequential events or anecdotes. As you mentioned, like Eve Sedgwick's eyeglasses, the queer literary theorist's eyeglasses, next to September 11th.
I am talking with Lana Lin, author of the autobiography of Thao Lam. I have to fit in a quick break here. We're going to have more with Lana when we come back. You're listening to The Gailey Show on AM 950 Radio, the progressive voice of Minnesota, and WCPT 820, Chicago's progressive talk. Stay tuned. More after this quick break. Welcome back to The Gailey Show. I'm John Parker. We are coming up on the bottom of the hour. The autobiography of Thao Lam was longlisted for the 2025 National Book Award in Nonfiction. Its author, Lana Lin, is my guest right now. Lana, I read your essay in Literary Hub, and you referenced Audre Lorde and her term of biomythography, which was her way of describing the fusion of biography and mythology and history in her 1982 amazing book, Zami. In your essay on LitHub, you shared that I'm going to read the quote here, you categorize your book as autobiomythography to more explicitly name the self in a complex interplay of self, other, life, myth, history, and writing, end quote. Let's unpack that.
Oh my goodness. You refer to my own words, so that's exactly how I refer to it. I mean, I'm very inspired by Lorde's biomythography, but I did want to call attention to also calling into question the self and the auto aspect. But like Maxine Hawkinston, like Audre Lorde, I'm incorporating material that could typically be overlooked or excised in traditional autobiography, like myth and dreams and misremembered memories, hearsay, and the speculative. So it's kind of all intertwined with drawing some attention to what we think of as, nonfiction.
I'm curious about in 2025, we're going through a particular moment right now. I'm curious for you being able to then look back at the Vietnam War and the impacts that it had on both of your lives, and now looking at it though from the year of 2025. I mean, as you were looking at and writing about that, including that in your book, was there anything that came up for you that you were surprised about in terms of writing the war? Or the impacts of it?
Well, looking at it when I was writing about it, in my book, the chapter after the war comes after the chapter on the Vietnam War, but I don't specify which war when I say after the war. And so in my mind, I was writing in 2020, it was kind of after the almost not a defined race war, but the Black Lives Matter protests, the COVID, anti-Asian hate. So I feel like that's what was informing that moment. And I mean, thinking about it now, and it's only 5 years later, I think about the Vietnam War in relation to the war in Gaza. This very long history of settler colonialism and violence that we are all living through.
Coming back to your Lit Hub essay, you talk about the cover of your book. Can you share the origins of it and how it's also in conversation with the autobiography of Alice B. Toklas?
The cover of
your book.
Yeah, of my book that I wrote about in Lit Hub is a kind of homage to the 1933 first edition of the Autobiography of Alice B. Toklas, with a photo taken by Man Ray of Gertrude Stein and Alice B. Toklas. Gertrude at her writing desk and Alice coming in through the door. So go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I had noticed sitting in our Connecticut old former sawmill that there was this kind of architectural resonance between the Stein and Alice photo and our own humble abode.
I'm here with Lana Lin, author of the Autobiography of H. Lan Thao Lam, which was longlisted for the 2025 National Book Award in Nonfiction. Lana, for our Chicago listeners, Lana will have a reading at the Women and Children First Bookstore on Thursday, November 6th. You can just Google Children First Bookstore and you can find the times for that. I believe it starts at 7 p.m. I am curious about the conversation or the interplay, the differences of your queer relationship and the relationship that Alice and Gertrude have in theirs. I mean, there could be similarities. They couldn't, there obviously are there very clear differences between the two of those lives. Can you talk about that queer conversation that you're having between looking at your lives and then looking back at the descriptions of Alice and Gertrude's lifelong?
Yeah, I mean, Alice and Gertrude were very collaborative in their life, although they really mimicked certain hetero conventions. Gertrude Stein referred to Alice as her wife. Gertrude was pretty much the genius artist, and Alice was her helper and cook and typist. But there was really more of a collaborative element that was not really acknowledged publicly. Thao and I are very publicly a collaboration. We do make collaborative work together on equal footing. This particular book is collaborative, but it is a solo author book. It's a different kind of venture, but we each have our own solo art practices, and But so I would hope that we have a little more of a balanced relationship.
There was a really lovely review of your book published in Extra by H. Felix Chow Bradley. I'd like to read a sentence of it because it really stood out for me. And going through the book your book, reading it as well. The quote is, "Lin's text is more subtle, more concerned with the intimacy of mundane details, of how those details, especially the shared ones, slowly, miraculously accumulate into a 25-year romantic and artistic partnership. I loved that sentence. What are your thoughts and reactions to that and hearing that description of your book and how you were writing the mundane details, so to speak?
Yeah, I mentioned that earlier, and I didn't want to make it seem like I was trying to conflate like these global crises with the everyday, so seemingly inconsequential. Is more to say that the matter of our everyday lives is important, and just to value it. And that those 25 years are an accumulation of these very minor interactions. So yeah, that review is so great, and also I think really gratifying to hear that the reviewer was saying the book is in conversation with the past and a way to give critical commentary about the past, but while also valuing the past.
The book is The Autobiography of H. Lan Thao Lam. We have links for you to order your own copy in our show notes and on our websites, am950radio.com and heartlandsignal.com. You can connect with Lana at lanalin.com, LANALIN.com. Thank you, Lana, so much for joining me today.
Oh, thank you so much, John. What a pleasure.
All right, we are going to take a quick break here, but we have more literary goodness to talk about. You're listening to The Gailey Show. Coming to you from the studios of AM 950 KTNF, the progressive voice of Minnesota, and airing on WCPT 20, Chicago's Progressive Talk. Welcome back to The Gailey Show. I am John Parker. We are 33 minutes after the hour. Before we get started with this segment, I want to thank our travel partner, Travel Marquette. I'm actually in Marquette this particular weekend. It is the Fresh Coast Film Festival. I've been coming to Marquette every year for the past 10 years. I love traveling here because I don't have to worry about being queer while traveling in Marquette, because Marquette County, super blue, Marquette the city, super blue, university town, very active pride organization. The world sucks right now, and so it's really nice to be able to get in the car and to go someplace where I can just be myself, be out in nature, get what some people think is too many books at the local bookstores, but really you can never have enough. Delicious bakeries. It's just the place that I go to refill my cup, as it were, in a time where we need opportunities to sort of get out of town and reset. So if that is something that you would like to do, and I have lots of recommendations for local places you can go to, if you want to reach out to me on Blue Sky in the DMs or on our YouTube channel, you can go to travelmarquette.com to start your adventure, travelmarquette.com. All right, our next guest is the author of the YA novels Better Left Buried and Seven for a Secret. She is a former early childhood teacher, teaches martial arts, runs, and at times disappears into the wilderness. Her debut adult romance novel, We Are the Match, is out now. Mary E. Roach, welcome to The Gailey Show.
Hi, John. Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to talk about books.
Yes, please. And also our neighbor in St. Paul, Minnesota.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great place to be an author.
Yeah, folks don't, I'm still bragging about the Twin Cities. I'm like, you don't realize how literary the Twin Cities are. And I'm like, New York and LA, come on, we got it going on here. So it's a very literary city for folks who are traveling to the Twin Cities. All right, so We Are the Match. I can go down the entire rabbit hole about how literary we are. We Are the Match. Tell us what readers can expect when they open to page 1.
Well, I like to joke that it starts with a bang, because literally it does. So if you're more familiar with my young adult, very tame for teenagers, no spice, We Are the Match starts off with one of our protagonists, Paris, in bed with two of her friends. which is like very just what the gay community is about, at least in my experience. And I love that for us. So it's spicy. It's a retelling of Helen of Troy, but with this like feminist sapphic angle. And it's a modern retelling. So it takes place in Greece on a fictional Grecian island. And instead of having gods like in Greek mythology, we have mob bosses and crime lords and or crime queens, I guess, if you want to call them that. So lots of danger and action, a little bit of sexy murders, as you know, as we do, and a happy ever after for our favorite lesbians.
I loved when going through the book. I was like, yeah, all those original gods were basically crime lords, anyways.
Absolutely,
When you
like
think about it.
I for sure, and I wanted to capture like both the horniness and the criminal nature of Greek mythology. Like that's
Totally.
what it's about.
Totally. I want to hear more about that, though. The process of retelling a 2,000-year-old story with that queer and sapphic lens of Helen and Paris. Talk to me about the writing of that.
Oh, it was so much fun. So this book has actually changed shape a lot. I originally wrote it back in 2019. So from idea to publication, it's seen a lot of different shapes. But I knew I wanted to take Helen's story and I wanted to give it this just fresh angle. And so many people have told Helen's story, and so many have decentered her and her voice and what she thinks. I feel like throughout history. And I am by no means the first person to have a crack at telling Helen's story in Helen's words. So I don't want to say that at all. There's wonderful retellings out there, but I wanted something that was just as gay as can be. And I wanted to reimagine Paris. Like I wanted to reimagine what it looks like to sort of seek liberation in this relationship, because I think that's such a metaphor for often how queer people find each other. And we joke often in our communities about that gay awakening and how intense that first like girl friendship is that wasn't really just a friendship, right? And so
Yeah.
I think about how we seek liberation that way. And I wanted to, like, Helen's story to me is about her seeking liberation. Like, what is so bad about being a queen that she has to run away? But it is. So, what about that marriage has trapped her? What about that position she's in at the beginning of the mythology has trapped her so badly that she's going to risk it all, including starting a war, to have a chance at some freedom? And so I thought of Paris as this like mean dyke lesbian as her chance at freedom, which is like also ironically how you know, again, just another metaphor for some of the queer community I've spent some time in. So it was a riot. It was a lot of fun to write, but I really just wanted to have this idea of like Helen and Paris finding freedom in each other, because queer people do that for each other.
I read a piece that you wrote in Books by Women, and you explained that a driving question of your novel is, and quote, "Who do we become when we have to survive the unthinkable?" Tell me more about that driving question.
Yeah. Oh, I love that you did your homework, first of all. Good for you. um, but yeah, I wanted to. I love to write stories about women who have sort of shrugged off our traditional ideas of what morality is. You'll see that in my thrillers as well. And Seven for a Secret was a recent one, and it's what happens when women are pushed to the margins. And this is true of many marginalized people, not just women, of course, but in We Are the Match, I'm exploring it through the lens of two women, two queer women. And when morality isn't constructed for you, the justice system isn't constructed to keep you safe. This system is constructed to take your power and use it to feed somebody else's. And when that happens to you for your entire life, it does change you and it shapes you. And so I love exploring characters who have decided to create their own. Paris has a moral compass. It's pretty gray, right? She does a lot of very bad things, but she thinks she's in the right. And I think that is so fun to explore. I think it is really, it can even be kind of healing to explore what it looks like to take your power back, even if it's in these really messy ways, even if it's in these ways that many people might not approve of. So I really think it's about just kind of stepping back into your own power, and women who do that outside of some of our traditional sense of what they should be doing. Paris and Helen are definitely not doing what they should be doing by anyone's standard except their own. but it's hot and it's fun, so they're doing it.
So, well-known story. You hit certain plot points from the original, obviously the Iliad. But I'm curious, were there moments? You know, this clearly was a fun novel, as you're telling us right now, to write about. Were there moments, scenes, characterizations that surprised you as you were exploring this kind of ancient story that you didn't know was going to come up for you as you were getting through the novel?
Yeah, so actually a big part of this, the way the plot is constructed, is in the original myth, there are three Greek goddesses who are all fighting, and they hire Paris so there's an apple that was thrown into a party. It says to the fairest. 3 Greek goddesses are like, we're going to fight over which one of us that means. They hire Paris to come in and decide. And instead of picking one of them, he says Helen is the fairest, and Helen runs away with him. So that's like the original start to the myth. And in We Are the Match, I wanted to play with that, but make it more explosive. And so I think that was something that I like wrestled with for a while. It's literally a grenade. That was my solution to this. It's a grenade that's inscribed from the queen. And instead of fighting over who was the fairest, they kind of have to fight over who definitely didn't, leave this explosive around the party, right next to Helen. So, yeah, I think that was a surprise. And I also think playing with those 3 goddesses, and they change shape a little bit, but they're instead, they're crime lords in this one, all 3 of them, and it mirrors just slightly like what they sell or what they do within that organization mirrors a little bit of what they do in the original myth. It's fairly different. I couldn't just like force it into the shape of the myth just to force it. But it was fun to have those little echoes throughout of finding ways to honor the original myth while still telling a new story.
So I'm curious if there was any research process. Like, are you a complete expert now on the Iliad?
I know I should be, but honestly, right? Like, what I learned actually in my research is that there are so many iterations of every myth. And they're like, well, so-and-so said it was this way, and so-and-so said it was this way. And so it's kind of like choose your own adventure. And I feel like the purists are going to be so mad at me if they hear this interview, but it really is like, it's the vibes. I already made it gayer than it was. Like, I'm taking some creative license here. So yes, in a way, like I've done a lot of reading, and what I discovered is that like there's no rules and I can do what I want. So that's where I'm at.
I am here with Mary E. Roach, whose debut adult romance novel, We Are the Match, is out now. There's some pretty stark violence in the book. We've been talking about bombs. Some of it involves fingers. No spoilers. I'll let folks' imaginations take it from there. Unpack for me, though, the legacies of violence in your novel and how folks are simultaneously trying to escape it and yet are complicit in keeping the cycle of violence going.
Yeah, for sure. I think Paris's whole arc is really about her coming to terms with the fact that she is as complicit as the people she is angry with, in so many ways. So she starts off the book with a grudge. She has lost her sisters to some violence perpetrated by these families, and she is here to end them. And I hope readers sympathize with her in that she is looking to get something back, but along the way she starts to lose more and more pieces of herself. And I think that's really true in how violence perpetrates over and over again. And I want readers to understand why Paris does what she does, even if they look at it and think that is the wrong choice over and over again. Like I want readers to get there with her. Paris takes a long time, and she is really angry, and she is so aware of her own lack of power that she starts to become really blind to where she actually does have some power and some choices, and she keeps making the wrong ones, and those wrong ones hurt people. And there's a scene about halfway through the book where her choices have led to some kind of eruption of more violence that had been she's stoking the fires. She is trying to start this escalation, and she had thought only about the casualties of being the people in very powerful positions who she doesn't like, and she has to kind of confront the casualties are so much broader than that. And this ripple of what she starts is not something she can control. She can only control that she likes this match, and so she has to really reckon with, was it worth it? Who did I become when I did this? And am I any better than these people who I am fighting? And I think that the answer often is yes. I think that if you're an oppressed person fighting for justice, like you have to, there are things you have to do to survive, and that is different than someone who is oppressing you, perpetrating violence. But in the end, I think what Paris really has to reckon with is that the violence she has started has also harmed people like her, not just powerful people. And it's really, it asks readers to sit with that a little bit. Mm-hmm. Paris is really, really messy.
I'm also curious how that fits into the times that we're living in right now, where there is a movement, a Christian nationalist, fascist movement that is really trying to disempower queer people. And you're writing within this, obviously you didn't write this book over the last 10 months, but talk to me about this concept and exploring this idea of trying to reclaim agency, trying to claim back your power.
Yeah, it's a weird time to be writing a book like this. It's a weird time to be putting out a book like this. You know, I don't, it's a weird time to be a person, a queer person with a wife. Even in the place like, you know, we're very lucky in Minnesota. I think we have a lot of protections. But my wife and I got married early before we actually have we're planning our wedding right now. We are having like our ceremony later this month. We did the legal part earlier because we didn't know what the future was of our right to be married. And so that definitely informs and shapes what I write. It always has. But this moment specifically has really shaped that. And who's allowed to tell our stories and what kind of stories we're even allowed to publish has become under fire again. It has never been a safe thing to do as a queer person. And that extends beyond just my identity as a white queer person. For people who are Black and queer, Indigenous and queer, that is an even harder uphill battle to even be able to tell these stories. And what it looks like to reclaim agency, I think in the real world and not in books. It's not as simple as, you know, throwing the grenade and getting the girl and running off to a different island and none of your consequences follow you, right? Like it's not that simple. And it's so much harder and messier. And I think that a lot of the ways that we do that is just like in finding our community. I think that it is really just we find other queer people like us, we tell our stories, we hold space for each other. And I think that's the biggest way that we can kind of hold that power with each other.
I'm here with Mary E. Roach, whose debut adult romance novel, We Are the Match, is out now. We're going to have to fit in a quick break, but we're going to have more with Mary when we come back. Check out our YouTube channel. We have a whole playlist of queer author interviews that you should be checking out and getting their books as well. Just go to youtube.com/@thegailyshow, where you can watch literally hours of queer author interviews. You're listening to The Gailey Show. We'll be right back. Welcome back to The Gailey Show. We are coming up on the top of the hour. I'm John Parker. Mary E. Roach is a former teacher, author of 2 YA novels, and her debut adult romance novel, We Are the Match, is out now. She is my guest. Mary, how do you write about the most beautiful woman in the world in 2020s United States of America, where we have so many things, out there? Like, what does that even mean today? How did you explore that?
So the thing about being a lesbian is that every woman that you meet is just like pretty much the most beautiful woman you've ever met. And so I got to this by being the biggest simp that you can imagine. So I had that answer locked and loaded for you. Like, this was just core to my identity. Also, the answer is that I have a really hot wife. I cannot help myself. I go on tour, I go on the radio, I go on podcasts, and I just talk about my wife. So you are so lucky that it has taken me this long to start talking about how beautiful my wife is. Like, I need you to know this is a rarity that it took me this long to get there. So
okay, well, I guess that begs the question, like, is the visual characterization of Helen based on your wife?
A little bit. Yeah. I also wanted to write I wanted to write Helen of Troy as like a really curvy protagonist. Like, I am not here for the really thin, sanitized version of Helen of Troy. Like, girls got hips. Girls got, I don't know how much I can say on the radio. I'm gonna hold myself off right there. So
please. Yeah, we don't want to attract any of MAGA's FCC looking our way right now.
Absolutely.
But no, thank you. That is I love knowing that. It gives a whole other dimension now to the
to the
novel as I think about it. Where you're also publishing a novel in 2025 when MAGA is doing everything they can to get our books out of the schools, get publishers to stop publishing them, and you're writing about queer love like unapologetically in 2025. I'm curious what this environment has been like for you as a writer. Has it been impacting you at all, or are you just like, this is who I am, this is what I'm writing, and forget about them?
It absolutely has. I think that's something that is different for me than for other queer writers that I know is that I grew up in an extremely religious evangelical atmosphere. So I have already been queer under Christian nationalism. It was just in my house. Instead of, and now it's kind of surreal as a grown up to have gotten out of that and to see it sort of taking the country in this wave. So in one sense, I'm used to it. In one sense, I've written stories since I was very young, even queer stories written in the margins of sermon notes. Um, and I never stopped. I don't think I could have. But I think it is, in one way, it's easier because I have that background. In another way, it's harder because I'm like, didn't we already do this? Like, don't we already know? So I think, yeah, it's complex to be here in 2025. I think that there was a really naive part of me as an older teenager and young adult who thought that I would just like, I got out and that meant I was out. So watching it catch up again has been disheartening for sure.
You're naming exactly what I've been, yeah, everything that we're hearing in the news and everything that people are saying, and they're like, oh my, like the text that just came out from all the young Republicans, and I'm like, yeah, this isn't new.
No, it's not.
Like, this is literally what a similar situation, super evangelical household that I grew up in, very Christian nationalist. I'm like, everything that you're all hearing right now is what I grew up with. And I'm just like you, Mary, like I got out and I thought, oh, I'm out, I'm free. Like, don't talk to my family. I mean, they like, cut me off, and I'm like, good. Like, it's this is honest, and this is what it is, and whatever. I'm just, liberated from it, and then it just is all coming back in, and I'm like, no, what do I have to do to get away from you people?
Move to Canada.
Right? They don't want Americans.
I know they don't. They really don't. No, and I really think that
there's no pathway to immigration to Canada for Americans.
No, it's really tough unless you marry one, but I've already married an American, so Okay,
I guess there's that one. Yes, there's one way to make it through. But sorry, I interrupted you.
No, it's okay. I hear you. It's a really scary time, and it's a frustrating time. Like I grew up with these little thought ending cliches thrown at me all the time, and now a whole bunch of people are believing them. Like you didn't have to. You could have just said no and turned off Fox News or whatever. That would have just been easier for all of us. But I think that there's still hope. I think that a lot of us are just like refusing to go. I think that people like you and me who have been through it before are really putting our feet down and being like, not again. This won't happen again. And I think that that's the case for many people who have been in activism for years. Like they have already seen this really horrible side of America, and they have really seen this, and they've been fighting it for a very long time. So there are a lot of people we have on our side who are not new to this work, and that does give me some hope.
Yes, well said. You're listening to Mary E. Roach, whose debut adult romance novel, We Are the Match, is at a local bookstore waiting for you to come and get it, or at bookshop.org. I've got just like under a couple minutes left, but you were a teacher, you've published YA novels. Briefly, what has been your reaction? What would you want to say to folks who are, saying, let's get all of the LGBTQ books out of our classrooms?
Unless you also want all the LGBT kids out of your classrooms, like you are never going to accomplish that goal, right? I was a queer kid and I was writing queer stories again in my notebooks in all of those classes where they weren't letting us read gay books back when I was in high school either. But I was still writing them, and we are still going to be here. So they can't do it. They fundamentally cannot do it, and we are not going away.
Well said. Mary has some upcoming events where you can meet them in person. Meet and greet at Once Upon a Crime Books in Minneapolis, 12 to 2 p.m. this Saturday, the 18th. And then an author Q&A at Barnes & Noble Galleria in Edina, just next door to the station, October 24th at 6 p.m. Mary, thank you so much for joining us here on The Gaily Show.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
We have links in our show notes and on our website for you to order your copy of We Are the Match, and you can connect with Mary at maryeroach.com. And thank you, everyone, for listening and or watching today. You can keep the gay going all weekend long. It's Pride on AM 950 this Saturday afternoon. Twin Cities Pride Amplified at 3 p.m., The Illegal Trans Woman at 4, Downright Upright Show at 5 p.m. And then on Sunday, rather at 11 a.m., it's Out Chicago with your gay best friends, Scott and Ellen. And until Monday at this time, keep it queer, America.